we're dealing with very high cost increases at the moment. The rent is being proposed to go up 7% for council tenants. However, the service charges and garage rents will be frozen. Not frozen in real terms, actually frozen 0%. So that's the information I've got. There are obviously comprehensive paperwork to explain why and to back that up. But that's the bottom line figures.
Thank you for that. Right, so no.
And also, the library's shutting for 3 months, which is part of the town's which is from March.
Yeah, I think we have some papers there explaining that, so I'd like the councillors to all have one, please. Welcome, Councillor Carr. I'm sorry? Sorry, I didn't get that.
There's no sale.
Yes, we're aware of that, Councillor Carr. Right, so we're going on to item 6.
Item 6 is the finance update down there. To note the summary of receipts and payments up to the end of December, approval of payments between the 1st of November and 31st of December, and to note the balances on the earmarked reserves and the bank accounts.
So, are we going to go through those?
If anybody's got any questions or comments to me on them.
Everybody here, Alan, for item 6, it's a finance update, pages 13 to 17. Sorry, yes.
I'd like to question there's a couple that I'd like to query, which is we've got a -6,000 on contingency allocations, which has taken us up to aggregate payments of 12,000. Is contingency, what does that break down into? Anything specific, or because we are so far over budget on that?
Yeah, they in effect are the reserves. So I think when we get to the budget report, I can give you the more detail as to where we're going with reserves. Okay. It's nothing to worry about.
Yeah. And the other one is the IT equipment. The service spent quite a lot on IT, including what's come out of the reserve.
Yeah, again, we've got an issue with IT. I've made mention to it in the budget report, and the words in the budget report is that the new town clerk will come back to you with a report on IT equipment, which there is an issue with in terms of licences, but you'll get a report back on that at a future meeting. Do you want to?
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether I've got an update on the IT. If that's helpful. Well, it's sort of an update on where we were to where we are now. So last year the council agreed to go with Cloudy IT for the computer support. We paid Cloudy IT £2,250 for services, which in fact they haven't undertaken the work. The only part of the work they've done is the scoping, which they charged £108 for. I've been talking to them, and I've also been checking through our email system to see what the audit trail is. Basically, Cloudy IT said they hadn't received the spreadsheet which itemised everything. And in fact, they had received it, and I've got the email route. So what they said was that they couldn't migrate any of the folders, which means that the system was a mess. So basically, the plan is to retrieve the £2,142 owing, which will therefore bring that figure down, hopefully, to 2,857 and 34p. So the 34p that counts. So when I spoke to Cloudy IT, even though I've got a contract, there was no start date, there was no commencement date, which basically meant that we hadn't got a contract because we had to have that to start with. So when I started on Monday, I was thrilled to find out that Daryl, the deputy clerk, has a lot of experience in IT, and he and Sal have been working on the system because there was an issue and Cloudy IT couldn't help at all, which meant that everything stopped. But Stephen and Sabrina Doherty came in to help, and they were really good and helped migrate everything over. We've still got some issues with integration of programs. For instance, Adobe is not playing. But once we've sorted that out, then we're going to review all the passwords of everything and the appropriate permissions. So a bit like GDPR, we don't all need to see everything. So once that is done, we, in my opinion, and certainly Daryl's opinion, we should probably be looking at a smaller local company who can pop in and say, on a monthly basis, say, is everything okay? Is everything running? And if we do have a problem, then they're sort of just around the corner, not necessarily actually, but so at the moment all the backup is on the NAS system, it needs transferring to the cloud system. So we will be doing that. I'm also checking out the Microsoft licenses. We should be able to get them at a reduced rate, and so we're checking that out as well. I've also checked out the website and who that's registered to, etc. And at the moment it's registered via Space Name, which is Stephen Doherty's. He works for part of that, I'm not quite sure where, but he's been really helpful as well. The renewal is October 23, and at the moment the registered person is Sabrina, obviously, so I'm going to be changing that over, but it's looking at the most crucial bits first and working our way through. So when I've got some done a bit further, I will come back if that's all right with councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Councillor McRae, you had your hand up first.
Yeah,
Did you want to
on page
comment?
17. Tell me if I'm wrong on this one, because I'm
Sorry.
So I'm looking at page 17. Tell me if I'm wrong on this, because maths is definitely not my big thing there. The neighbourhood plan, which says we've spent £4,083 between 22 and 23. We haven't had a meeting for about 2 years because none have been called. So we've had no updates or anything. It would be really nice if we could be told what's going on with the neighbourhood plan, especially if we spent 12 grand on something.
Sorry. I think, Bob.
I'll just rewind back to the money from Pariati, that's definitely coming back to us.
It's a very big hope. I have said to them, but they're not contacted with them, and we should be able to get it back because it's their fault, if you like, that they've not undertaken the work. So, yeah.
Simon.
On the neighbourhood plan, we've been waiting on Borough, they've been dragging their feet. It's a case of like we've sent for a lot of information for them and they just haven't responded to us or also Colin, so it's a case of like we're waiting for them.
Right.
We're basically waiting for some maps and a sustainability appraisal being done by the borough. I do understand that has now been done, but we were, of course, I think we had a meeting where we approved a draft of the design briefs over the summer. So people have been working on the documents over the last year to produce those. and we are, I think I have been in touch with Beverly on about doing the next steering group, because we are now ready to do that, but obviously with the budget and everything and the staff changes, we haven't done that yet, but that's coming up imminently.
Can I just add for Councillor McRae, those transactions of in both income and expenditure are to get you to where you are now. So they're for work that's already been undertaken.
Are there any more questions? So,
All in favour of?
so can we have a propose, please?
I propose that we accept the payments on part I think.
Little B, yeah.
Yeah.
That's just an 18 line.
How is it? How is it? Which one's
Yeah.
With me.
A, so it's B.
B?
To note A, C and D and note B.
Okay, I'll propose that we approve those then.
And second. That's proposed. So, I know. So can I ask all those in favour, please, to accept that? Any abstention? Or any? No. So I think that was. Item 7 is a grant application. It's to consider a request for grant funding of £900 from RideWise. Sorry. I would like to propose that we defer this application, and my reasons for that are it's a very poor application, it's incomplete. It's for £900 and I feel that we need, I'll come to you in a moment, I think that we need to have more information before, and so I would like to defer. So, any questions on this? Councillor Hallam.
Happy to second, but for different reasons, Madam Mayor. Happy to second your deferral though, because I was going to propose a similar thing. Having spoken to, understanding the relationship between RideWise and the State of the Town deal, and knowing very well the team that are administering all of this at the borough. I did go to the economic development team at the borough and said, could you just, is there something wrong with RideWise's funding that has prompted them to ask for section 137 from the town council? Because if there is something wrong, I want to know about it, because this was set up by the town deal. Which is obviously a much more substantial pot than we have at State of the Town Council, and I had confirmation that capital expenditure should really be coming from the town deal itself, and there is money left in that allocation for that's already been ring fenced out of the larger sum for them, and any revenue. Should ideally be coming from the terminology on the paper. I'm afraid, Madam Mayor, today I've been awash with 3-letter acronyms and I can't remember which one's appropriate. The SPF, thank you, Jess. This is why we're married, because I get the concept and Jess fills in the details. The SPF, which is also organised at this time by the borough, and that already has an allocation. The reason I say at this time is because if we get an executive mayor, it's all getting shoved up a level or two. But so that's really where it is. So I've asked the team at the borough to have a one-to-one conversation and check with RideWise that this is all okay, and that and whether the money would be better coming from elsewhere. While that conversation's happening, I agree with deferring.
So,
Can I just ask, just for
Yeah.
my education, what's SPF? Sorry?
Hang on, let me just.
Sorry, I didn't mean to trip people up, but it's an acronym I've not come across.
Hang on. I may have got it wrong, and if I find where I scribbled it down in paper, on paper.
Don't worry, Councillor Howell. We'll sort it out afterwards.
Oh, hang on, there it is.
Just say what it is.
I can't remember what it stands for. Madam Mayor, what it is the replacement in inverted commas for what used to come from EU funding. So it's UK Gov's answer to community funding
Oh, I
by
see.
application.
Virtual what? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Shared prosperity for that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We all knew
that's
it.
it.
We did, yeah.
Shared prosperity fund.
Yeah.
Then I would like to propose that we defer this. So do I have a second?
I've seconded it. Yeah.
You have done?
Yeah.
Wow. So all in favour, please. Absolutely. Thank you. Very good. So let me do that now then. Oh, sorry, but I didn't see any abstentions. I thought it
Yeah,
was.
no, I abstain because I'm on the town.
Oh, I do apologise. We have an abstention. Were there any against? No.
It was passing.
So that's passed. Item 8. To consider updating the list of authorised signatories in the Town Council's bank account. That is page 23. So can we have a quick look at that and see whether or not we can approve it?
I'm just making three proposals really, but one is for you in little a to agree the positions on the council that you would normally use for councillors, for members to become signatories to the bank account, retain the current list of members that are approved signatories, changing it by the time we've changed it, it will have got past the election, I suspect, and to formally approve that the new town clerk Beverley is an authorised signatory to replace the old town clerk. So it's rationalising and regularising our banking arrangements.
So that's the following positions to approve the following positions as authorised signatories for the purposes of operating the town council bank account. So are we taking these as individuals, the votes, or en masse?
I would try and do them en masse.
Well,
if you can.
I'll do them en masse, but stop me if. So that would be the town mayor, the deputy town mayor, the leader of the council, chair of Finance and General Purposes Committee, and the vice chair of Finance and General Purposes Committee. So I propose that we accept them.
Do you want me to propose that?
You can propose it. I was about to propose it myself, but you
that's
can
fine.
do it.
Propose that.
So we have a proposer. Do we have a seconder? We have a second. We have two seconders. Thank you very much. Can we move to the vote then, please? All in favour? Any against? Any abstention? Oh, I should have said abstentions first, but I take it that is passed. Item B is to retain the following town councillors as authorised bank signatories for the remainder of the current civic year. That would be Councillor Sue Patterson, Councillor Simon Frost, Councillor T. Needham, Councillor Boffinger, and Councillor Gould. So I would like to propose that we will carry on with that. Unless yes, we need a second there. Do we have any? Well, we'll take the vote first, and then I'll ask if we have any So can we move to the vote, please? Are you all in favour of that, leaving it as it is? Are there any abstentions or any no votes? Right, thank you. That's done.
And then, sorry, you just need to finally appoint Beverly as the new town clerk as a signature.
I have, yes, sorry. I've forgotten to ask you to approve Beverly as the town clerk, as a signatory as well, because otherwise we're not going to get anything signed off. So I propose that.
I will second that.
All in favour, please, for Beverly. Thank you. That's just. And item 9, we've all been waiting for, I think. I wouldn't have cheered if I were you. Is setting of the budget and preset, and that is page 25. And I'm going to.
Would you like me to pick out the highlights of this?
I would love you to pick out the highlights.
The
On the right page.
page 25 we start
Yeah,
at.
I know it's page 25. Here we are.
To start with that, I spent some time looking at the budget that you considered last year, and all the figures are the same, but I've rehashed and reorganised them in slightly different cost centres, and hopefully that's a simpler demonstration of the financial budgets that you've got for the town council. In terms of constructing the budgets, we're in a pretty volatile period at the minute with regard to inflation, etc. So I've used a figure of 7.5% generally for next year, with a figure of 5% for payroll costs from the 1st of April. Going forward, and I'll come in detail to the medium-term plan, but I've left in an allowance for inflation going forward of 5%. Council tax referendum, you'll be pleased to note that the government have not extended referendum powers to parish councils, so there's no limitation on what you can increase your council tax by without having the need to go to a referendum, although they have imposed a limit of 3% for all, and when I say principal councils, it's mainly districts and boroughs and unitaries. Well, no, not unitaries. Those councils that don't have social services, because there's a slightly different calculation for those. I think you need to keep that in the back of your mind when you are looking at budgets and the council tax increase for next year. Your council tax base has gone up very slightly. 27.5 Band D properties. That's less than 1%. I've not had it actually confirmed, but I'm fairly sure that pretty low increase is a result of the borough council making a bigger provision for bad debts for next year than they would have had previously. And going forward, you would anticipate that council tax base will continue to rise as the new houses on the farm development on Coventry Lane become complete and people start moving in. I'd just like to point out that the mathematics of this in 5.1 is that the preset that you're required to set, the decision you make is the preset divided by the council tax base. It gives you the Band D council tax charge for next year. So you don't set the council tax charge at Band D level, you set a preset, and that preset is converted to a Band D charge by the borough council, who are the billing authority. There's Chapter 6 is specific issues in terms of movements within the various cost centres and various detail figures within it. I've on the spreadsheets, the numbers that go with the report. I've set a sort of new cost centre up for reserve fund, so you can see where money's coming in and out of earmarked reserves from your general revenue account. And you've got a pretty extensive list of reserve funds, which I'll come to in a minute or two. But you're well positioned, I think, to deal with the earmarked reserves that you've identified and that you've got, although there is some rationalisation of them. Don't particularly go to any of the details in chapter 6, in paragraph 6. I think hopefully they're all fairly self-explanatory. 6.8 is an issue, and I sent an addendum round on Thursday after having met myself and Beverly met with officers from the Borough Council to deal with Christmas lights. The addendum hopefully sets out what the deal is as far as Christmas lights are concerned. Basically, the proposal is to devolve the responsibility for Christmas lights down to the Town Council. That's already happened, I understand, with Kimberley and with Eastwood, but the accompanying that devolution is a grant of £10,000 per annum for both 23-24 and 24-25 financial years. And I am told that the cost of erecting, dismantling and testing the lights can be accommodated within that 10,000 figure. So if you're happy with that as a proposal from the Borough Council, you need to add 10,000 into both expenditure and income into your estimates specifically for Christmas lights. There is an issue going forward after those 2 years worth of grants have expired, and I've put it into the addendum to seek a request that the Borough Council longer term, if they decide not to renew any grant funding directly to the town councils, that they then effectively charge the cost of the Christmas lights in Beeston, so that is picked up by the Beeston special council tax rate, so that the people of Stapleford, Kimberley and Eastwood are not paying a contribution to Beeston's lights as well as paying the full cost of the lights in their towns. And I think that's quite a technical point, but I think it's an important principle that you ought to raise with the Borough Council in that context. There was a figure missed out as well on the addendum, which was for notice boards, and I'm suggesting that can be dealt with by taking the money out of the High Street Improvement Fund, so that it doesn't impact directly on the general revenue account, if you're happy with that. Earmarked reserves, I'll go through them in a bit of detail because we're proposing to change them a little bit. Building fund, no particular change. Elections fund, obviously you've got full elections in May, so the cost is about 25,000, it would appear, and you need over the next 4 years to build that fund back up so that you can meet the cost of the full elections in 2027. London Bridge is no longer required. The Christmas fund, there was a nominal balance, put it back into the general reserves. IT equipment, retain it because you might want to do something when you've got a better idea as to the structure of the council moving forward. The neighbourhood plan we've already spoken about. Allotments, you can transfer. What you've done over recent years is taking the net surplus on the allotment revenue account and put it into a reserve fund. There's no need to do that. So you're building a reserve fund up for no particular purpose. I'm suggesting you take 18,000 back into the general reserves and leave 10,000 in allotments for any allotment improvement works that you want to do over the next year or so. The Platinum Jubilee, rename that a coronation event. High Street improvements, no change, but apart from the notice board. Hemlock happening, it's there if it carries on. Town Ranger equipment, you haven't got a Town Ranger, doesn't look as though you're going to have one, take it back into general reserves. Play Day is there if you want to support future events. The Freeman Woman Award, it's £1,000. If you make one, I would take that out of revenue expenditure in the year that you do it. You don't need a reserve fund for that. And the emergency support fund is what you set up this time last year to meet a rainy day or a disaster if one occurs. In one sense, the most significant bit of the report and the figures is the medium-term financial plan, which is on the front page of the appendix of numbers. It's vital, in my opinion, that when you set your precept in any year, you have an understanding and appreciation of what that decision means for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. If you don't do that, you're making a decision in a vacuum of knowledge, and you're potentially storing problems up for yourself in future years. This time last year, you set a deficit budget. And what I mean by that was your precept was less than your net expenditure. So to achieve a balanced revenue account, you had to withdraw money from your general reserve fund. You can only do that once. Once you've used your general reserves, that's it. They're gone, and you can't keep doing it. So setting a deficit budget, if you've got huge reserve, fine, and it's a valid decision, but only if you understand the context and the implications of that moving forward. If you don't do that, you really can run into significant problems. What I've demonstrated in that medium-term financial plan is that to get that deficit budget back into balance, you need, and you don't do it in one fell swoop, because you'd be putting the council tax up by the precept up by about 25%. So I'm proposing and suggesting that an annual increase in the precept of 10% will get you back on an even keel in about 3 or 4 years' time. That's not predetermined or setting in stone. Future town councils setting their precept in future years, but you're setting the direction of travel with that. So I'm not saying it's 10%. You need to fix that in. That's fixed in stone. You need to look again when you're looking at your budgets this time next year, what that revised position is, and what the medium-term financial plan looks like for another 3 or 4 years moving forward. But the suggestion, the proposal is that for next year, for 23-24, you increase your precept by 10%, and that will put you back on a trajectory of putting the reserves back to a level that's probably more acceptable, and closing the gap between your precept and your net expenditure. The 9.1, paragraph 9.1 sets out what the figures are for that. All these figures are described or given out at Band D council tax rates. So your Band D council tax rate will increase by £2.48. It's slightly less than 10% because your council tax base has gone up, so you've got more, slightly more money than you would have by just keeping the same council tax rate as this year. I mean, to put that into perspective, we're talking a 21p a month increase, £5 pence per week increase per week, and that's for people who are not on council tax benefit, and the vast majority of your community live in a Band A or Band D property, over half, I think. So the figures for them are even less, and the Band A property would be £16.51 per annum. Oh, okay, that's me done.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm slightly uncomfortable because it's all about percentages, isn't it? It's not that much. We know that, for example, county have put 4.8%, which looks very generous considering we have a data for the year. Borough just said this is 3%. So for us then to say 10% is going to be quite unpalatable. And as you say quite rightly in 6.5, we've got to make sure we're covering for properties that for people that can't pay. I think that now we're going to put more people into that group that can't pay. So I'm sucking the teeth slightly, I've got to say it, I think of 10%. I know it's pence, but it's going to make us look bad. The second thing is, should we really make decisions for the next administration? Yeah, I can understand on the smoothing effect. As well as that, there's the IMF and the ONCS that say that inflation will come down. Of course, inflation coming down still means we're paying, but it's just the inflation, the amount more we're paying is there. I feel psychologically it'd be right for a single figure, but what that big single figure should be, I don't know.
So I have a few concerns about this budget, in particular the pre-SAT increase. I deeply worry it's way too high, being double digits, I think. I don't think, as Councillor Brown's points, that it will not be the right message for residents of Stapleford during this difficult time with the cost of living increasing and inflation high. Of course, we need to balance the budget. But I wasn't particularly concerned about a couple of assumptions made. And of course, I'm a bit worried as well about trying to set a budget for the next 5 years. Of course, we could have an entirely different council for the next 4 years. In fact, with investment to 2029, we could have an entirely different council after that, so for the 2027 elections. But I was particularly concerned about the assumption of an annual inflation rate of 5% per annum, where various organisations like the National Institute of Economic and Social Research are already predicting that inflation is going to drop to 3.9% by the end of this year. I know we can't be too optimistic about projections, about forecasts, and we need to consider the worst case scenario, but I'm just worried it's not a realistic worst case scenario. That because we're seeing inflation is still going to be well above the Bank of England's target of 2%. I just feel like it's going to be one message for residents, that it's going to be harder for them to save up, particularly for the less well off and the elderly who've saved up all their lives and now have to pay even more money for pre-SAT. I think I would have liked possibly, and I know looking at some of the earmarked reserve funds, we have cut some funds which I think we need to, I think sadly cut back in difficult times. It's horrible, but it's disappointing. We want to try and help some people, but when we have to balance the books, we have to make creative decisions instead of making most easy decisions like let's raise the pre-SAT by 10%. It doesn't matter, it's just a few pence, but it may not be a few pence for the less well off, where that could be the difference between paying a mortgage, paying a rent, to sliding into poverty, unfortunately. So I'm afraid that I cannot support these proposals currently, I'm afraid. I just want to make a second point, though. I'm sorry to be slightly contradictory about cutting money, but I'm actually a bit concerned that we may be cutting 743. It's about London Bridge, and of course, sadly, Her Majesty died in September, but I'm concerned after May, we need to, after the combination, we need to have probably a very small pot of money, but a pot nonetheless of money in case our current one sadly passes away. I believe it's called Operation the Night Bridge, as reported in various websites. I'm just worried, is that necessarily what it's going to do to get rid of London Bridge and hence there's actually an operation tracing back among staff where actually we need to be sensible about, of course, we don't know. I really hope it's a very long time until His Majesty passes away, but of course it's in the 70s, we have to be very much prepared. I'm just wondering, is there any way just to have a very small amount of money just to maybe build up over the next 10 to 20 years just in case the unthinkable happens and at least just be prepared. I think those are my 2 comments about.
Thank you. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, both Councillor Brown and Councillor made the same comment, I think. Just to be absolutely clear, you are not making any decisions for the next administration. You're only making a decision tonight for the precept for the next financial year, which you have to do. Whatever the precept is, you've got to make that decision by law. All I'm trying to demonstrate in here is where you need to get to, and providing you with a path to get there, which doesn't involve huge hikes in precept to get to a balanced budget. You don't want to be doing that. But if you don't start off on the trajectory of getting back to a balanced budget, you're going to leave a very difficult position, financial position for the next town council, because they'll inherit potentially an even bigger deficit than what you're trying to deal with tonight. So it's about managing. I get the politics of it. I'm not here to sort of get engaged in that political debate, but part of what you need to do is to deliver, as in my view, to the people that inherit the council after the elections in May, are not left with a huge financial hole that they need to fill. The London Bridge thing, we spent at just over £100. So that sort of money, you'll pick that up in a revenue account, any revenue account.
Maybe in next administration, just a time it could be.
Right, there seem to be a lot of questions. So, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, I listen to Martin Lewis an awful lot. He's been an absolute godsend over this, and he doesn't agree at all with what Nice says. Unfortunately, the inflation is here. We can't do anything about it, none of it. So it's happened, it is, and we're looking at it 10.8, I think it's 10.5% at the moment. How long it's going to be, I really don't know. I don't think anybody around this table can give us a definite answer on how it's going to be. And as Alan has said, he's crafted that report quite well, that we've got to look forward for our decisions for our time around this table. Now, when the next time comes, do we leave them with a massive budget deficit? Or do we do what we have to do? And that's come to somewhere near that 10%. If it can't be 10%, can it be somewhere near it? It's something that, take the politics out of this, look at this for our town of Stapleford. If we can get the best we can for whoever's sitting around this table after May, maybe us, or as Richard's favourite saying is, maybe 18 different people sitting around this table. Sorry, Richard. It's a case of like, we have to do that. And we have to make the sometimes unpalatable choices. But if we can get somewhere near the 10% rather than 10%, is that doable? That's the question I've got. And leave it at that.
Councillor Patterson.
I think for me, one of the biggest things is the Christmas lights. We have got
to now start thinking about then, because in 2 years, we're going to have the funding for 2 years from the borough. After that, we have got to find £10,000 to put them lights up, and we need at least, yeah. So we need to start thinking about that now. It impacts our budget. I do know the Christmas lights that are for Stapleford are quite run down and broken and do need replacing as well at some point. The figure of 10%, I'm still not decided, if I'm honest. I'm just, I'm listening to the whole debate, but I feel we've got to make this money from somewhere. This is being passed down to us. This is going to be the council's responsibility to take on, and I think we need to be looking at that. I think it's a big part of the budget as well.
Councillor McRae.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say about the Christmas lights is I think that should be taken separately, and as I've declared an interest in that, I won't be discussing anything else on that. I just thought it'd be nice to do it separate. On some of the paperwork, there's a thing where for State Carnival it says £2,000. I'm going to ask if that can be withdrawn and put down to a 0, so that might help a little bit. I would say where we've got high street improvements, £11,875 just sat in the bank. I think it's a shame that the current administration have not come up with any good ideas to spend that money, because Stapleford is a bit of a mess. We're residents saying it all the time, we sat on nearly 12 grand doing that, which should have been spent on improving the high street. And then I have got some concerns about 6.6, where it says Carnegie Hall cost thing. We haven't really given a breakdown of the hourly costs and all that kind of stuff, because that's something that he's looking into. It actually says here, the annex has not been let out, and so the estimated income of £5,400 has not been achieved. That was a thing. If I say a year, it might have been longer than that, I can't remember, that we asked if that could be brought back into use and get back on the market and rented. And at the same time it was agreed that it's not used for anything until that happens. I was down here the other day with Councillor London picking up dog poo and fox poo and other stuff. It was in the car park, absolutely disgusting. And we was kindly allowed to use the sink in the annex. And it is actually being used. So I would like to know who's using that, why they're using it, when the agreement by this council was it shouldn't be used. And then it says here, however, this has been offset by a large extent by a higher than anticipated level of room lettings, which is really good. I actually came down here the other day because I've got a few events coming up and I was looking at the venue. And I walked in and walked straight out. I've never seen the Carnegie Hall looking such a mess in my life. I actually received quite a rude email from somebody a while ago. I'm not getting into names because that doesn't matter. And I was told that I had to come down immediately and clear stuff out of the cupboard that Stapleford Community Group shared with this council, and it was things like bunting and waving flags running from events on the high street. And we was told we're not allowed to use it, and if we don't collect it, it'll get thrown away, and we have to take stuff out of the cellar as well. So I find it quite odd that that very same cupboard is now full of wool. So I just wonder if groups are being charged for using that, but the annex is a mess, and it shouldn't be. It should go on the market, £5.5 grand. And like I say, Apple has done some events in here to bring some money into the place, and others have told me the same. You walk in, it looks like the back end of the jumble sale. It's not fair.
Thank you for that, Councillor McRae. Thank you. Councillor Needham.
Okay. There's a few things to go back on this. The first one I want to talk about is the inflation rate. It is a rate which is how quickly something is changing. So although the inflation rate is predicted to come down, it doesn't mean that the costs are reducing. And last year we set a budget at 6%, which was just below the annual inflation rate, and then it went up to like 11% or 13% at one point. So we're always on the back foot with that. So at the moment the inflation rate is 10.4%. So even if we set it at 10%, we're only really just covering inflation costs, if we're honest. And I get people's apprehension about the 10% because of how it looks, but it is, I've had this discussion before, and I've brought it up at the council meetings before, just how low our precept is per Bandee property compared to the rest of the borough. We are still the lowest precepting per Bandee by quite a bit. Then I think the next one is Eastwood, who charge, I think, something like £36 per Bandee. I think we're currently at 24. and if arguably Eastwood is the most deprived area in the borough. So, you know, and I get what you're saying about you'd like it not to say 10%, you'd like it to say 9%. The reality of that is that's working out about 2p less per month. You know, it's not a big thing. To put that into context, I mean, I get that people are struggling. I am in the unfortunate position of my fixed rate mortgage deal finished in September. So I am now looking at a 6% mortgage deal rather than 1.75. Fortunately, I managed to jiggle things about. I've worked out I'm probably in my household about £200 a month worth of stock at the moment. You know what? Paying 20p a month. You know, you might say it's a straw that breaks the camel's back. As far as I'm concerned, it's not even a change in air pressure. You know, it's such a small amount. If you made the reverse argument, say we cut it by 10%, you're saving somebody 20 pence a month. They're not going to go, well, hey, thank you. You know, look at it that way. This 20 pence a month, what that will actually do is enable us to set the next administration up on a trajectory to do whatever they decide they want to do. Now, I mean, you might want to blame me for the fact that we've had a negative a deficit budget for the last few years. I don't mind that. I accept that we did that, but that was partly because, like Richard said, why are we sat on all this money with nothing happening to it? And we have actually tried to do things with that money because it's not our money at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers' money. And if we need to do things, we have done. And I was ambitious and tried to do, like Alan said, you know, go, right, okay, this is the increase that we need initially to cover all the costs. That wasn't popular with the council, fair enough. So we're doing it incrementally. So what this actually is the incremental change where, okay, we're taking a lot out of the slush funds that we've got in reserves initially, but we're also gradually bringing up the precepts so that they do match. And I'd like to thank Alan for all the very hard work he's done in putting this together, because he's made it very nice and easy for me to understand it, and he's put a lot of work into this. And I think we should go for the 10%, because at the end of the day, when it comes on people's council tax bills, they will see that it is a percentage, but they will also see the amount next to it. So that's what comes on the bill. So they will see the pounds and pence. And when we put it up by 28% the first year, I don't think we had anybody writing necessarily complaining about it. I can't remember anybody getting in touch with the council livid that it had gone up by that much when they saw the amount. So I would say, in the interest of putting the next administration in a good position, we should go for the 10%. And I take Richard's point about the annex, but unfortunately I don't think I'm necessarily in a position to discuss this, but Beverly has been working on this with relevant groups, and we think we'll have a solution. Okay, so that is being looked into. Thank you.
Councillor Hallam.
So, Madam Mayor, given that this time every year I normally get proper ranty and come out with some shocking or last minute amendments, I think at least a couple of people in the room might be quite relieved that I'm not looking at any massive tweaks on this, because a lot of, you know, everything that's been said so far by everybody, I actually agree with. And these are the factors that we're playing with. Yeah, I've always maintained personally, my standard is I'm uncomfortable with a precept increase that exceeds inflation. This is not that. It's close to. And I similarly will also give thanks to Alan for putting this together, because I think this is the easiest budget that I've ever read. There is a concern that I have, and we've all talked about it in previous years, whereby if we keep dipping into reserves, there's eventually the reserves will run out, and then we'll either have to close down the town council entirely, or we'll have to put up the precept so much that people go, wow, where the heck did that bill come from? So I'm not going to disagree with 10%. I think that's a sensible figure. But I would like to tweak a little bit how we look at the breakdown of that, so that the next administration, whoever that may be, will have a fighting chance at it. But we're giving them pretty much a steer in the right direction. I'd like to bring this budget is still a slight deficit budget, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
You know, we're still drawing on reserves. We've still got more money going out than coming in. I would like to fix that as much as is possible with that 10% amount, and that's going to involve some tough calls, which I'll go through. We can't do it in this budget because because this is a thing that requires a lot of planning. But I would like to see. It's going to be up to future administrations, but I would like to see allotment rents go up in line with any increases in precept. We're in a position at the moment, if you go onto the allotments page on this, that whilst it looks on the bottom line like allotments are actually making money, they're not. Because what's not a line item on the allotments expenditure is the staff hours that go into their maintenance and management. If the allotments sheet had a pro rata share of staff hours, we would actually find that everybody in this room and everybody in this town is subsidising those that choose to hold an allotment. I don't want allotments to be expensive, but nor do I, as somebody that chooses not to have one, be paying for somebody that does. I would like those figures to balance, at the moment they don't. So as soon as it's possible, and there is a notice period associated with this, I would like to see allotment rents go up whenever we increase the precept. We have a ring-fence reserve for Hemlock happening at the moment at 2,000. That was for a previous event. It hasn't been invoiced. Let's put the money back in general reserves. That helps. That helps to bring our deficit down by £2,000. I'm more than happy to do that. Everybody knows my involvement with the project. It's definitely going to happen this year. It's definitely going to happen every year that I have anything to say about it. But I don't think it's right for us to pay for it out of the budget where we're struggling to make ends meet. Very glad that Richard's made the similar proposal to remove the carnival from the budget for the same reasons. I believe, Councillor McRae. We've all got to do our bit. If we're going to ask the public to make a tough call, then we can't be seen as frivolous ourselves. So I'd like to see £2,000 come off the budget for the carnival. So we've now got from those two. Well, okay, Hemlock happening. That's not changing the deficit. That's just putting more money. That's not changing the ins and outs. But that is topping it up slightly. The carnival that's an ongoing cost. That's a current budget. So that actually is bringing that gap much more in line between income and outgoing. I would like to put a nominal income, a placeholder income, if we will, into the income from the annex for budgeting purposes. I think it's very important that we don't lose sight of the fact that that is meant to be making this council money. We might have somehow failed over the last year where we were expecting to receive that income and not made use of it. Certainly, I like to think I did my bit to try and get that off the ground, but it hasn't. But let's not forget about it. Let's not give it a budget line of 0. Let's give it a budget line of half a year, and assume and work very hard, and hope that the next administration works very hard to make sure that income potential is maximised. If the next administration chooses to find a different way of making that money back, then great. That's just an internal money shuffle without changing the ins and outs too much. I don't think this year is the right year to be increasing Section 137. It is not fair to say, you know what, we're going to literally mandate that people pay their council tax bill and you'll go to court if you don't. But we want you to give us more money so that we can voluntarily give it to our chosen charities. If people are feeling flush, let them make their own charitable donations. Let's not force them legally to make us do it on their behalf. I don't think that that's right to increase. I also don't think it's the right thing when people are going to be facing hardship to reduce it. So let's freeze it, let's not increase it. There's another £370 saved. This will undoubtedly be an item for discussion at a future council meeting, but as Councillor McRae's already alluded, we need to look at our rates. We can budget whatever we want, but if we don't set our prices, which is not the responsibility of the budget, if we don't set our prices differently to what they are, then they will stay frozen in time forever, and we'll have to pass more and more and more of the bill onto the taxpayer. So, can we please nominally increase, and sorry Alan, I didn't mention this earlier because I forgot to, can we nominally increase please the expected income from leasing the hall? We've done very well with that. It's gone over expectations. Let's look to increase the rent where we can, increase the lease where we can. I would suggest putting it up in line with the precept increase. We've got high demand. There is high demand for those, and it's gone over budget before. So let's blob an extra £500 on the expected income from that, and therefore look to make sure that that's achieved in the next financial year. That's the hall hire. I mean, the hall hire. And as for the rent, again, I don't know how this happens. I don't know what the tenancy agreements are for people using the facility. But I also think that we ought to, at the first opportunity, look to increase our leases for permanent people using the building in line with the amount that we're expecting to increase to the public as well. So, which doesn't affect. I wouldn't suggest changing the numbers on the budget for that. I just think it's something that we actually need to do, because we're going to hand on the bill to somebody. We ought to hand on the bill to everybody. I don't want to quote David Cameron, but we are all in it together. So yeah, I'm going to propose, if I may, because I haven't made a proposal or a second yet. I'll propose the budget as is, but with those amendments, which I'm happy to hand over my scribbling notes for the purposes of the minutes. So I'm happy to propose that, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan, do you want to come back on any of that?
No, I think in terms of a process, I think you should deal with proposed changes to the budgets first, get to a position where you either agreeing them or not agreeing with them, and then we can deal with the precept when those changes have been dealt with, whether they're accepted or not.
Teresa.
Thanks for that, Tim. That's very useful. I mean, obviously, I didn't want to say that we weren't going to fund Hemlock Happening or the Carnival, because I know a lot of people would want that. So if the people who are involved in those processes are happy for not to fund that, that's a big help. Thank you. With the allotment rents, I mean, obviously, that's something that's going to take a bit of time to sort. I think we do need some sort of report on how that will break down, because we can't just say a nominal percentage and come up with a number, because, you know, we've got to look at the costs involved in everything and make sure we're passing that on fairly. A similar thing with the rates on rental. I think we do need to compare, because like we did when we were looking at renting out the annex, what the going rate is, and actually come back with a report. So I'm happy for those things to be looked at. I mean, it is a bit of a difficult one, because I think they both do need a report coming back to council.
Yeah.
So to put a number in the budget tonight is going to be tricky. So how about we put, like, is it possible just to put a nominal increase on that, or do we want to just say we'll fix it at that, but look at it at a later date with a view to reducing it?
Can I point of clarification? So yeah, this is exactly why I didn't propose changing the numbers for the permanent occupant, because that is going to require a whole different process. I don't think we ought to expect the allotments to change, because as I understand it, by the time any change manifests after a notice period, we'll be in a different budget anyway. So I just want those things to be thought about. Nominally, we can change the hall hire prices pretty quickly if we choose to do so. So I believe so. So nominally, I'd like to add 500 to the expected income, just as a placeholder pending review.
Okay, if I just come in quickly, allotments, you need to give a year's notice of any increase. So, yeah, and it's a good practice if you can to keep charges in line with generally with inflation if you're able to. It's you're suddenly left with banging them up significantly like the position you are with council tax. So I think that's good practice. At the end of the day, the figures here are your estimates. They're estimates. They're not set in stone. They're estimates of what you're going to spend and what income you're going to bring in. So I'm entirely comfortable with nominally changing these figures. Now, you're setting the estimates. You've got a Finance and General Purposes Committee coming up in a fortnight's time, I think. And I would suggest that if we bring a report to that committee, taking on board the decisions you make tonight, if that's what you decide to do, in terms of what that means in terms of increases for both allotments and for the other higher charges that you're making, so that you can consider that with the knowledge and information that you would want to when you're considering such an increase. But for tonight, for the estimates, what's being proposed, I'm entirely comfortable with if that's where you wish to get to. But I think we need to deal with that first and then go back to look at what the precept is. So
the proposal is? The
proposal is from Councillor Hallam that, if I go through them one by one, that the budget for 23-24 for Section 137 grants is reduced by £370 to £5,000.
Well, actually, if I may, Alan, I'm not proposing to reduce it because actually there isn't a proposal that I'm amending, so I'm proposing to freeze it.
Yeah. Sorry. When I say reduce it, I mean reduce it from the figure that I've got here.
Can I make notes back on this then if we're taking them through one by one?
I'm just.
Okay.
You may be able to do this as a package. I don't know.
Okay.
So grants, Section 137 grants becomes £5,000. Allotment rents, rental income. You can't do anything with that, but we will get a report back. On the Carnegie Hall, you put a nominal figure of £2,500 in for income in 23-24 for the annex, and increase lettings income by £500 to £7,000. On town centre events, you remove the carnival budget of £2,000, and in earmark reserves, you effectively transfer the Hemlock Happening balance of £2,000 back into the general reserve fund. Is that what you're proposing, Councillor Hallam?
That is exactly it.
That's been moved by Councillor Hallam. Is anybody going to second?
Do we have a seconder? Well, we have a seconder. Yes, that's been seconded. So it's been proposed, it's been seconded, can we please move to the vote? All in favour? Can we just count those up? Any against?
Passed. No matter. It's passed.
It's passed anyway.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I won't attempt to tell you what those changes mean in terms of these figures. But just before we get to the precept, you need, if you're going to accept the position on Christmas lights, you need to put that into your budget, both expenditure and income of £10,000.
Right.
That's your next decision.
So,
can I propose that we add the Christmas lights in at 10,000 expenditure and
10,000
income as well? Thank you.
do I have a seconder for that, please? All in favour? No, that's
I didn't. Sorry,
no,
you need to keep
can
your
we
hands
go
up a
all
bit
in
longer.
favour again, please, so we can just have a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Any against?
3. That's passed.
Any abstentions?
As I, at the beginning, give a declaration of interest in that item, so I've got to abstain on that one.
Okay.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I've just realised we're proposing to make a budgetary allocation for the Christmas lights, which I think is all fair and sensible, but there hasn't actually been a resolution of the council that we want to accept the borough's offer, so we're being a bit premature.
We are being a bit premature.
Right, okay, right.
Yes.
Do you want to deal with that tonight?
No. No.
These are estimates again. Okay. The principle in terms of the financial deal is a little more complex, as you will appreciate.
Councillor.
There's a lot of chatter about the lights on social media, so I think people feel a bit under the collar about it.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a big subject to be dealt with on its own, and I think the town needs to be involved slightly more in that, because there's a lot of things to be considered. For example, if we do change the lights, excuse me, will these become of a lower power, and therefore our expenditure on electricity be a bit less? What sort of lights do people want? It's a bigger subject than just this first set of money will probably tide us over, won't it? But it needs a big review. Sounded quite.
Councillor McRae.
Yeah, I wanted to say earlier, someone mentioned about the annex. I was just going to say, can we have a full report come back to the next council meeting on what's going on with that, instead of just being told I can't talk about it? It'd be nice if everybody here could be told what's going on, because there was instructions to put it back on the market in case anyone was interested. And as usual, no one was told what's going on, so it'd be nice if a report could come back to let us know what's going on with it.
In response to Councillor McRae, and we've had this conversation already, myself and Beverley, you will get a report back on the building, on Carnegie Hall, the annex, and what its purpose is and what you want to do with it in the future. So I think that's quite an important thing. And you're quite right, Councillor McRae, at the minute when you walk into the building, it's not a particularly attractive entrance, I'm afraid. But there you go. There is also the notice boards. Can you just confirm that you're happy to put the notice board expenditure against the High Street Improvements Fund?
Do you want to propose that? I'll propose that we put the notice board against the High Street Improvement.
I'll second that. All in favour? That's, I think, unanimous. Can somebody pass some water down, please? That'll do. I'll just
a little bit so that you missed it.
yeah. Thank you. Councillor Frost.
Yeah, if I remember right, I'm just looking through some stuff. The High Street Fund was for the notice boards. That's what it was originally set up for. Because when we had the meeting, ages and ages ago, because Lorraine was there, when we first set up at, I think it was eventually, we were going back 3-4 years. It was set up then that it was set up for that. And we couldn't do anything until we got information back from either county or borough on the circle boards, but the was set up for the, but that was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
Craig, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as I'm aware, and I might be wrong after now, we was given some money from the county council because we kind of told them we could decorate the high street for about £8,000, and I can remember very clearly Councillor Grindle sitting there telling us about 12 times that no, we can't. Well, we've got that money sat in the bank, and no, we can't, because it's not enough. So I've always been a bit baffled why we've never had to give the county council money back, because as a community group, sometimes we apply for funding, you have to spend it on what you applied for it for. And if you don't, you have to give it back. I can't go out and spend it on a new pair of shoes or 20 bottles of Pride from Wakey Wines. You've got to spend it on what it's for. Now, I said I might be wrong, but I'm sure that's what we got that funding off the county council. But it wasn't just for notice boards, it was for a lot more than that, for way more than what we had to outreach, just sat there.
I think if I may,
Absolutely.
Chair, I think some of that was for the hanging baskets and flower displays. So it wasn't just notice boards. I think it was a mixture of things.
Yeah.
So it did get spent.
My needs are more basic than that. There's a bill outstanding, I've got to pay it, and I need a budget to find it from.
So where are we at now?
You now need to decide what your precept is going to be.
Councillor Reardon.
Can I propose a 10% increase on the precept?
Would somebody like to second that?
I'll second that.
So can we move to the vote that we increase the precept by 10%?
Well, I'll be increasing the precept to 114,566.
But yeah, I suppose that's the technical thing, isn't it?
Yeah, the precept, yes. You're setting a precept of 114566.
I'll propose that.
Any seconded?
Yeah.
All in favour?
Nine.
Any against?
Fine.
So that's passed.
Thank you.
So are we going on now to 6.9?
Yes. You've got an outstanding, sorry,
Wait,
The recommendation is on at the bottom, I think, paragraph 10. There's
Yeah.
a recommendation. One of which is the precept.
Interim councillor.
that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm talking about. It's the interim town clerk.
yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Town Mayor, there is a recommendation 10.5 which is to agree the medium-term financial plan, obviously with all the changes that you've made. That's merely setting out, that's not setting anything in stone again, that's just setting the position for the next 5 years. And 10.6 is whether you wish to meet us, hang around for a bit longer.
I'll come to that in a minute. So we need another recommendation then.
Yeah.
And the recommendation is that the draft medium-term financial plan as set out at Appendix 1 be approved.
And modified by.
Modified by the figures.
And modified.
Yeah.
So that is a proposal.
Am I happy to second that?
Yes. Can we then please move to the vote? All in favour? Any against?
That's passed.
That's passed. That's gone.
Would you like me to leave?
I'm going to. Would you like to leave?
Yeah. Well,
Right. Okay. I'm just going to.
please.
I'm just going to repeat.
You get going early.
Our interim town clerk. So you're evicted, but don't go anywhere.
No, I've got the keys.
Thank you.
Page 30.
I've got.
Paragraph 10, page 30.
And this is a proposal to retain the services of the current interim town clerk, Alan Mellon. Did I call him Alan Mellon? Alan Mellon. To undertake the town council's final accounts for the 2022-23 financial year and provide support and mentoring to the new town clerk. I strongly recommend that we do retain his services. I think he is doing a fantastic job at the moment. He's also supporting our new town clerk and mentoring as well, and I think I understand. I'm going to let you speak in a minute when I've finished. I'll give you a moment. I understand the financial aspect of all of this, but I think it is money well spent because we've had a horrendous time in the council, town plot wise. You know, we need to get on an even keel now and make sure that everything is in place and ready to run properly as it should have been done in past times. Can I think Councillor Helen Davis, I remember.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would like to speak.
I was just going to add, could I amend that slightly by, I think something needs to be added to it, to something like during this time, at the end of that proposal. Because at the moment it would read as pretty open-ended. Much as we love Ellen, we don't want to employ him.
We don't know how long this is going to take, but I think if I can't give you a precise date or length of time, but it's certainly.
When does the
at the end of the financial year, I think we can. Sorry?
That'd be the 1st of April, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We can't go to St. Michael Fool's Day.
That's what I was assuming. That
Yeah,
that
assumption is
that
correct.
did refer to the end of the financial year. So it's the second part of that, and provide support mentally to the new town clerk during this time. We sort of tie the two together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's
So,
the proposal.
on the payroll tab on the Excel document, local consultancy, we've got £10,000 in this financial year and an estimated £5,000 23-24 for continuing the mentoring. And I remember reading somewhere that the proposal was the mentoring continued into the next financial year, but I can't remember where I read that.
I don't think that will be the case, though.
We've agreed a budget which says that we need to do that.
Well, I was going to propose, I mean, for the first time, we've roughly got there with a budget, and there's still people, you know, have their own opinions, that's fair play, but I think we've reasonably got there, and we've been quite sensible around this table. So what I'd propose is that with the, as Richard keeps saying, there might be 18 new ones down here, why don't we keep Alan? I propose that we keep Alan until the new council, administration, new leader, new whatever are here, and then we can go from there. That's what I propose.
Councillor, I think the gentleman in question will decide as well how long. When we first spoke to Alan, I think he was going to give us 3 months. We managed to extend it further because of the circumstances. He's still with us, and as long as it takes. But I don't think I think he's going to have a say in that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And I think that it's not going to be a lot longer. But he will ensure that Beverley has been given a fair crack of it. He's passed on his knowledge to her, and he did not come here at all on any sort of temporary or long-term basis. Now I've got hands up everywhere, so I think you're next.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, obviously it'll be a bit with Alan and Beverley to see, obviously, when Beverley feels comfortable.
Yes, of course.
In her new role, and hopefully, she'll say, "I'm ready now," and he'll be released sooner.
Yes, Councillor Hallam, I think, and then you.
I think adding the words as Councillor Hallam Davis proposed during this time, or words to that effect, kind of puts a reasonable amount of flexibility into it, without running the risk of going, oh, hang on a minute, because let's be honest, it is very expensive. Well worth the money, but not forever. So I think I completely get what Councillor Hallam Davis is saying. At the moment, this is very open-ended. Adding a few words puts a pretty bouncy, but quite
So-
definitively not going on there forever. So I'm happy to second that. It doesn't. We're not tying anybody's hands. I think it's just for the sake of completeness, isn't it?
Right, councillor.
I would be in favour of keeping Alan's services, whilst I'm concerned about the cost, especially in these financially tough times for the council. I think he's provided very positive impact in the short time he's been here. I just am a little concerned about the precise date. Of course, we don't know when Gavin will be ready exactly. That seems fully comfortable being town clerk, but I think the sooner the quicker he's here, I think the better. And particularly, I would like him to be here when the legislation comes in May, because I think he has several good ideas for the council, including meeting dates, as discussed in the last town council meeting, and reducing the number of council meetings in general in order to, which maybe in future attract more staff here Tuesday for the town council, actually make it easier, make it easier to attract people to work here instead of having some arcane dates.
Well, thank you for that, councillor.
The good thing is he is actually a locum, which means we don't actually have a formal contract with Alan.
No.
It is an ad hoc basis. So at the moment, he was employed at 20 hours a week. Obviously, I envisage that scaling down, and it might be that we do want to retain him, maybe just for a couple of hours a week here and there later on. We don't necessarily have to make a fast and hard decision about that because he is a locum, which is one of the benefits. But if we want to put in an end date, but obviously then we do have that flexibility later on. If we say, actually, Alan, can you come and give us a couple of hours support?
I think
beyond
that. I think Councillor Helen Davis's suggestion is a good one, and it's support for him as well as for us as well. Councillor McRae, were you wanting
Yeah,
to?
I was just going to say, it's just been nice having, we've got some good staff, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
And it's been a breath of fresh air. It's actually nice to come down here and not feel sick when you leave the place.
Mm.
And that's another story. Apart from the mess, I think we're quite getting there, aren't we?
I think we are, and I'm, very happy about the situation as it is. We've got people in place that we want in place who are going to help make this council thrive and move forward, and very supportive of the councillors as well. We, as councillors, I think we are deserving of respect. I'm afraid we haven't always had that with former members of staff, but there you go. I'm going to fetch it in then. And we're going to do a vote first.
Should we vote? Yeah.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
yes, Tim, I'm so glad you're here. So our proposal is that we retain the services. Sorry. The services, we are going to retain the services of the current interim town clerk. And just help me with this one, Councillor Helen Davis. We're going to retain the services up until, we're going to give a date. Here we are.
I think we were going for a date.
No, not a date.
Somebody said something about April the 1st.
We're talking about, it mentions the financial year.
It's that.
Yeah,
It's just
okay.
that second part about providing support and mentoring to the town clerk with that. So it assumes it's till the end of the financial year. So it's looking like during this time.
Final period.
Paragraph 6.9, payroll.
Yeah.
It says for a period in 23-24 to complete the final accounts and provide support mentoring role for the new town clerk.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify, because we're all going the same way, we're just struggling on wording. Can I just clarify, using your words? The way I read this, to prepare Alan's going to do the final books
Yes.
at the close of the financial year. This work will be carried out in the next financial year. We have a budget allocation for him in the next financial year to close off the books. So, Councillor Hunt-Davis's addition of the 3 words during this time, when you're talking in the context of closing the books for this financial year, which will be done next financial year, is a finite date, but allows time for the job to be done. So hence the fact that it's a very clever use of just 3 words to actually wrap it up in some context.
Time.
Yes, during this time.
Thank you. Right. Councillor.
The other thing that I just thought about is we've got the elections coming up, and if Beverly's never done them before, having somebody on hand that is there to give the help if needed, as we've just been pointed out by Teresa, because he's a locum, if needed, we can ask him to return to give extra help. Because Beverly, if she's never done this before, I wouldn't know where to start. And I don't think many around the table would, with the exception of probably Tim.
Right. I think that goes without saying, Councillor. So can we please move to the vote? So that's to retain the services, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I get this wrong, of the current interim town clerk, Alan Mellor, to undertake the town council's final accounts for 22-23 financial year and provide support and mentoring to the new town clerk during this time. Yes? Have I got that right?
Yes.
Can we go to the vote, please? Yes. All in favour? I don't think I've had a seconder. Hang on, put your hands up. Yes. Oh, you did. Right, so it's passed. Let me go and get it. Right.
No.
Don't any of you dare tell him that we don't want him.
So we all did it,
But we could, of course, tease him by saying that. Right. Well, Alan. Where are you? Wow. I wouldn't make myself comfortable in that chair.
I'm already feeling uncomfortable.
Right. Well, it's unanimous that you stay with us.
Right,
as long as it's
you've got no
necessary.
choice.
I thank you for all that you've done so far, because it's been magnificent.
That's a pleasure.
It's been really, you've brought stability and so much more to this council, and I think everybody agrees with that. Yeah. So we all like you.
Well, you're not so bad yourselves. Some of you.
They're on the best behaviour tonight. I was not looking forward to this meeting, but it's been very good. I think everyone's done.
10.
What time is it?
Item 10.
I've lost my minutes. I really have. Some of it's walked off with We're at the end, aren't we?
Yeah.
We just.
For what papers on my read.
Somebody's pinched me. I've got them over there. So item 10, please. Oh, wait.
Item 10, date and time of the next meeting, 24th
Yes,
of March.
the date. Here we are. Oh, I hate this time of year, setting up. I've got to pay out more than it. So, thank you very much, everybody, as well, and it's been a very civilised meeting, almost enjoyable. So, item 10 is the date and time of the next meeting, which is the 24th of March 2023. So, are you happy? You can all
Date and time?
Right, are you all in favour of that?
I move that Councillor Moffat can no longer be heard.
Because it's
Steve.
Thank you.
Just me.
After this meeting, I don't think. It's just been hectic. So today, I was like,
I'm ready to go.
talking about make sure and then